My name is Rachel Bennett, and I am 34 years old. I have spent my life trying to keep order in a world that is often chaotic, meticulously organizing the pieces so they fit neatly together. For the past 4 years, my life had been entwined with Ethan, a man whose charm could disarm a room, and whose family moved through society with the precision of royalty. They were polished, deliberate, and as perfectly curated as the life Ethan wanted to build. My family, by contrast, was a whirlwind of love and noise. My dad, Frank, had hands permanently stained from decades of work, a man whose humor could fill a room louder than any chandelier. My sister Maya was chaos embodied, an artist who lived for color, expression, and the occasional dramatic flair. They were messy, they were loud, and in Ethan's world, they were embarrassing. The wedding was supposed to be the culmination of our love story, a grand celebration funded by a modest inheritance I had received from my late mother, a gift I intended to use wisely to honor both her memory and my family. To Ethan, it was a production, a feature in a glossy magazine, a showpiece of perfection. We were knee-deep in planning, budgets swelling as he added layer upon layer of sophistication. It was in our apartment, more showroom than home, where the cream-colored walls gleamed under soft lighting, that Ethan finally spoke the words that shattered the illusion. I was wrestling with seating arrangements, trying to figure out where to place my joke-telling Uncle Jerry, when Ethan sighed, a sound of weary, condescending patience. "Rachel," he said, staring into his wineglass, "we need to talk about the guest list." I froze. "We've all discussed it," he continued, his voice carefully measured, "and it's for the best." I blinked. The best for what? My chest tightened in that strange way where disbelief collides with the slow burn of hurt. He finally looked at me, his gaze a mix of sympathy and calculation, the kind you see in people who believe emotion can be perfectly controlled. "Your family? They're not invited." The words hit me like a sledgehammer. I stared at him, the ambient city noise fading into nothing. What do you mean, not invited?" He explained as though he were talking about a menu choice, not the people who shaped my life. "Their energy doesn't match the tone of the event we're creating. It's meant to be an elegant affair. Your father, your sister, they could be a bit much. Embarrassing even. I'm sorry, but it's true." Embarrassing. The word lingered in the air. My father, who had worked tirelessly to give us a home. My sister, my closest ally, the person who laughed at my worst jokes and cried at my smallest failures. My family, the foundation of who I was, reduced to a liability. "Not invited?" I repeated, my voice barely above a whisper. "Not exactly," he corrected, a small laugh that grated across my nerves. "We'll just not send formal invitations. Maybe a casual brunch for them afterward. More their speed." It was an erasure. I realized in that instant that this wasn't about a wedding. This was about control. My love for him, for the polished stranger I had trusted, flickered and dimmed. The project had failed. I didn't yell. I didn't cry. I went into my own version of project management mode. I smiled, calm and placid. "You're right," I said. "No problem." Relief flashed across his face, sickeningly pleased that he thought he had won. "Oh, thank you, Rachel. This is going to be perfect." "Yes," I said softly, "it will be perfect." And in that moment, I began to plan. The wedding, as he envisioned it, was over. But the celebration of my life, my family, and those I truly loved, that would go on. The 6-figure deposits from my mother's inheritance were safe, and they would serve a purpose far greater than pandering to entitlement. That night, as I lay awake, I sketched a mental blueprint. Every detail, every guest, every favor, reimagined to honor my family. Ethan thought he had chosen perfection, but he had chosen ignorance, and ignorance can be exploited. It was only the beginning. The next morning, I woke to the soft hum of our apartment, perfectly staged in Ethan's vision of luxury. Sunlight spilled over polished countertops and expensive glassware. To anyone else, it looked like a home brimming with happiness. To me, it was a stage, and I was now both actor and director. I spent the morning smiling, nodding, answering Ethan's endless questions about flowers, linens, and the band. "Do you think the harpist should play a minor key here, or major?" he asked, circling the blueprint of his dream day like a conductor obsessed with precision. Yes, Major, I said brightly, hiding the storm that was already growing inside me. It'll make the transition to the first dance smoother. He beamed. He believed I was aligned with his vision. He didn't see the other side of the equation, the plan I was constructing in the quiet corners of my mind. I had created a new email address, a digital sandbox where vendors and planners could communicate without Ethan ever knowing. Every forwarded message, every clarification, I managed so that his oblivious participation never interfered with my real work, transforming the wedding into a celebration for my family and friends. The secret thrill of it made my pulse quicken. I was orchestrating a double life. In the mornings, a dutiful fiancé. In the evenings, a strategist planning a gala that truly mattered. Invitations went out under the guise of an exclusive family appreciation event. My father's favorite uncle, my sister's best friends, even our long-neglected neighbors, who had always been part of my life, everyone was included. Instead of sterile, formal table settings, I envisioned laughter spilling into every corner, the warmth of chaos replacing cold elegance. The favors were my small act of rebellion. Ethan had commissioned hundreds of intricate monogrammed boxes, each bearing his family crest. I found the artisan and suggested subtle alterations, extending lines here, reshaping curves there. The monogram transformed from Ethan's mark into Bennett, a quiet but potent act of reclamation. Even as I coordinated, I had to navigate Ethan's ex, Vanessa, a shadow from his past who seemed to exist to complicate matters. She had that practiced charm, that subtle smile that made you question whether anyone around her was ever enough. She began dropping hints, casual remarks about my family. Your dad's jokes might not be sophisticated enough for Ethan's friends, right? She didn't know she was feeding my resolve, tightening the strings of my plan with every careless word. The evenings were spent cross-referencing vendors, tracking budgets, and carefully redirecting logistics without leaving a trace. Every misstep could reveal my intentions. Every accidental glance from Ethan could unravel weeks of work, and yet the more I worked, the more empowered I felt. For the first time in years, I was not following anyone else's script. I was writing my own. There were small victories that made me smile in secret. The florist confirming a sunflower centerpiece, Maya's favorite, without Ethan ever knowing. The musicians switching from formal jazz to a playful soul band. Favors quietly altered so that each guest held a symbol of family and love, not status or entitlement. At night, I would lie awake, imagining the moment Ethan and Vanessa would arrive and see the celebration they had never imagined. The thought made my chest tighten, not with fear, but with anticipation. The room would be filled with my people, my family, the ones who had never needed an excuse to love me. And there they would stand, Ethan and Vanessa, faces drained of the smug confidence they had carried for so long. It was a dangerous game, but for every risk, there was a reward far greater than anything Ethan could offer: justice, respect, and the quiet satisfaction of seeing the world shift in ways he had never expected. Even as I planned, I reminded myself of the stakes. If discovered too early, the plan would crumble. Vanessa could interfere, Ethan could catch a misstep, but I was careful. I kept a mental map of all contingencies. Every email, every phone call, every florist visit had a double layer of secrecy. And through it all, the most important truth crystallized. I was not betraying anyone I loved. I was protecting them. The wedding may have been a stage for Ethan's obsession, but my gala would be a stage for authenticity, laughter, and love. The very things Ethan and Vanessa could never understand. By the end of the second week, the pattern was clear. My mornings belonged to Ethan's world, full of schedules, flowers, and endless decisions. My nights belonged to my family, full of careful orchestration, hidden triumphs, and whispered celebrations. The double life had begun, and with it, a thrill I had never known. The thrill of reclaiming control in a world determined to erase the people I loved. The third week of my double life felt like walking a tightrope over a pit of fire. Every misstep could reveal my secret plans to Ethan, or worse, to Vanessa, whose presence now seemed to hover at the edges of every conversation. It started innocuously enough, an email from the florist that mistakenly went to our old shared account. The subject line read, "Sunflower centerpiece for guest of honor, Bennett family." My heart lurched, my fingers trembling as I quickly excused myself from a work call. I had seconds to log in, delete the message, and ensure Ethan would never glimpse the truth. A bead of sweat slid down my spine as I hit permanently delete. Crisis averted by a single breath. Even minor interactions became tests of precision. Vanessa, radiant in her effortless elegance, attended one of Ethan's planning luncheons and smiled at me with that faintly mocking tilt of her head. "Your family is unique," she said softly, as though I would crumble under the subtle jab. I smiled back, warm and unbothered. Inside, my pulse quickened. Unique. That was code for unfit, for the disorderly chaos she and Ethan seemed to fear. But I had a secret advantage they could never anticipate. The chaotic warmth of my family was exactly what I was building this gala around. Their love, humor, and laughter would be the centerpiece that no amount of money, polish, or entitlement could replicate. The pressure escalated when Ethan's parents began pushing. Margaret, his mother, called almost daily, her voice syrupy with faux concern. "Rachel, darling, you simply must consider the seating arrangements. I wouldn't want any awkward moments with your less sophisticated relatives." Every word dripped with subtle contempt, a constant reminder of the social ladder Ethan had climbed and the one I had never intended to scale. I listened, polite, amused, my mind racing to ensure every suggestion she made could be quietly redirected. Every helpful suggestion became an opportunity. If she wanted a floral adjustment, I complied, but secretly inserted my sunflower centerpiece for Maya. If she demanded a seat change, I accommodated in Ethan's world, while ensuring my family's table was perfectly arranged for maximum joy and comfort. Ethan remained blissfully unaware. He floated through the apartment, obsessed with linens, the perfect champagne flute, and his vision of elegance. He asked me to confirm final guest counts for the rehearsal dinner, and I nodded, hiding my growing exhilaration at the gala I was creating in parallel. And Vanessa, always Vanessa, hovered like a storm cloud. Her casual comments and knowing glances were designed to unsettle me. "I hope Ethan knows how difficult it is to manage both your worlds," she remarked one afternoon, eyes glinting with mischief. She thought she was testing me. In reality, she was sharpening my resolve. Every jab, every glance, every pointed word only cemented my determination to succeed. The real tension, though, came from the constant risk of accidental exposure. Vendors occasionally mentioned details in passing that could have tipped Ethan off. I learned to move swiftly. One wrong text, one glance at the wrong email, and weeks of secret orchestration could unravel in an instant. My life became a series of precise movements, like a chess game where every piece was under my control, yet the opponent had no idea the board had changed entirely. Through it all, I felt a strange thrill. It wasn't just about deceiving Ethan, it was about protecting what truly mattered. My father, my sister, my extended family, people who had never judged, who had loved me unconditionally. They were the real center of the story, and for the first time in years, I had the power to make that undeniable. Every night, after Ethan fell asleep in the penthouse apartment that smelled of expensive perfume and new linens, I'd review the gala plans. The music, the favors, the seating, the decorations, all aligned perfectly with my vision. A subtle change here, a clever adjustment there, and the wedding that was never meant for my family became a celebration of them instead. And the more I planned, the more I realized this wasn't just a party, it was a statement, a demonstration that love, loyalty, and authenticity mattered far more than money, prestige, or social approval. Ethan thought he controlled the narrative, but I was quietly rewriting the ending. The weeks passed with a mixture of exhilaration and tension. The closer the wedding date came, the more I had to balance appearances. My mornings were spent in service to Ethan's fantasy, my evenings in service to reality, the chaotic, messy, beautiful reality of family. And with every passing day, the anticipation of the final reveal grew. Soon, all the careful planning, every secret adjustment, every risk carefully mitigated, would converge into a single moment, the moment Ethan, Vanessa, and the world would finally see whose lives and whose love truly mattered. The week before the wedding, my wedding, at least in my mind, was a whirlwind of controlled chaos. Ethan was entirely consumed by his vision, the linens, the floral arrangements, the color palette, the playlist. Every morning, he would glide through the apartment, pointing out details, his polished smile masking an almost obsessive precision. And every morning, I smiled back, quietly calculating, rehearsing each step of the plan I had meticulously crafted. I began moving sentimental items, small tokens that connected me to my family's messy, chaotic love. A photo of my dad teaching Maya to ride a bike, a scrapbook of family vacations with sun-faded edges, little things that would subtly remind my guests why they were there and why Ethan's carefully curated world could never compare. Every phone call, every message, every vendor meeting had two layers, one for Ethan, carefully tailored to reinforce his illusion, and one for the gala, executed in secret. I had learned the art of compartmentalization. By day, I was the dutiful fiancé, nodding and smiling. By night, I was the architect of a celebration that honored the people who truly mattered. Vanessa, ever present like a shadow, began inserting herself into the process more boldly. She would drop by the apartment under the guise of offering help, her words dripping with subtle condescension. "I hope Ethan knows how difficult it is to manage both your worlds," she'd say, tilting her head as though testing me. I merely smiled. In truth, every comment, every calculated glance, only fueled my determination. Vanessa thought she was intimidating me, but she was sharpening my resolve. The most challenging aspect was balancing Ethan's world with reality. His mother, Margaret, called constantly with helpful suggestions. His father, Richard, dropped by with subtle financial advice and thinly veiled pressure about the wedding budget. Every one of their actions was intended to manipulate, to assert control. And every one of them I turned into a tool for my plan. If Margaret demanded a color adjustment to the flowers, I complied, but secretly integrated my family's favorites, like Maya's beloved sunflowers, into the centerpiece. If Richard suggested shifting the seating to favor Ethan's friends, I complied on paper while ensuring my family's table was at the heart of the gala, perfectly positioned for warmth and laughter. At night, I reviewed every detail once more. The favors, subtly altered to bear the Bennett monogram. The playlist, swapping stuffy jazz for upbeat soul and funk. The decorations, balancing elegance with the casual vibrancy of my family's spirit. Every detail had been meticulously curated to honor love, not status. I also reflected on Ethan himself, oblivious. Immersed in his dream of perfection, he never suspected a thing. Every morning, he would discuss overwater bungalows, flower arrangements, and dress fittings, while I quietly recalibrated the true narrative. And Vanessa, always Vanessa, loomed like a storm, her presence a constant reminder that the smallest slip could unravel weeks of careful planning. Yet the risk only heightened my focus. Every glance, every remark, became a cue to double-check, a signal to tighten control. Despite the anxiety, there was exhilaration, a quiet thrill in knowing that soon all the calculated maneuvers would culminate in a moment that Ethan and Vanessa would never forget. It would be a revelation, a room filled not with socialites and judgment, but with laughter, chaos, and the warmth of people who truly loved me. As the final hours approached, I packed a small bag with sentimental items, documents, and essentials, preparing for the day not just as a fiancé, but as the orchestrator of a perfect unveiling. My apartment, my sanctuary, became a war room of emotion, strategy, and quiet anticipation. That night, I lay awake, listening to the city hum below. I felt a strange combination of fear and empowerment. Fear, because one wrong move could expose everything. Empowerment, because for the first time in years, I was in control. I was shaping my world, my story, and the story of the people who truly mattered. The next morning, when the Rolls-Royce would arrive, when Ethan and Vanessa believed they were walking into perfection, they would instead be confronted with something far more potent: authenticity. The people who loved me unconditionally, celebrated and honored. And the realization would hit them like a wave. I closed my eyes and pictured it. The laughter, the tears, the warmth of family filling the hall. Ethan's shock, Vanessa's thinly veiled anger, and in the center of it all, me, quietly triumphant, knowing that the day was no longer about appearances or entitlement. It was about love, loyalty, and truth. The morning of the wedding, the gala, was quiet, deceptively calm. I woke early in a modest hotel room, far removed from the polished penthouse that Ethan still believed was our shared dream home. Sunlight spilled over the simple furnishings, but inside me, a storm of anticipation raged. I dressed carefully, slipping on my outfit for the day. Understated elegance, nothing flashy, but perfectly suited for someone orchestrating the day's greatest surprise. I placed my father's worn wedding band on my finger, a quiet talisman of the foundation I had been standing on all these years. I sent Ethan a final text. "See you at the venue. Can't wait." He replied almost immediately, breathless with excitement, oblivious to the truth. Arriving at the historic estate early, I surveyed the hall. The banners, the music, the tables, it was all exactly as I had imagined. The sign at the entrance read, "The Bennett Family and Friends Appreciation Gala." No society snobs, no cold formalities, just family. My family. The heartbeat of my life. The band struck up a funky bass line. The decorations glowed warmly under the lights, and every detail reflected the laughter, love, and chaos that made my world real. Soon, the hall filled with my people. Dad telling one of his famous stories, Maya laughing uncontrollably at some private joke, neighbors, friends, everyone who had ever loved me without conditions. The sound of genuine joy filled the space, rich and intoxicating. At precisely 4:30 p.m., the white Rolls-Royce crunched down the gravel driveway. Ethan stepped out, a vision of polish and entitlement, with Vanessa trailing like a shadow. Their eyes scanned the room, expecting elegance, prestige, and the curated perfection of Ethan's fantasy. Instead, they saw my family, loud, chaotic, radiant. Confusion flitted across Ethan's face, quickly followed by annoyance, then dawning horror. Vanessa's lips parted in disbelief, her eyes darting from face to face, searching for a familiar ally. She found none. Ethan approached me, his expression a mixture of fury and incredulity. "Rachel, what is this? Where is everyone? What have you done?" I sipped a glass of champagne, calm and unflinching. "You said you didn't want my family at our wedding. So I took that into account. I canceled the wedding and threw a party for the people who actually love me." I picked up one of the favor boxes from a nearby table and turned it for them to see. Bennett, not Ethan or Vanessa. A subtle monogram, a quiet declaration. The color drained from Ethan's face. His mother gasped, clutching her pearls. His father's jaw tightened. Vanessa's carefully maintained composure crumbled into thinly veiled rage. Alistair, like Ethan, might have thought he could humiliate my family, but the tables had turned. "They were never the problem," I said, my voice steady, carrying across the hall. "The problem was thinking appearances mattered more than people. My family, the people who love me unconditionally, are the only ones who should have been here." Screams erupted from Vanessa and Ethan's mother, a mix of fury and disbelief. Threats were made. Lawsuits hinted. Social ruin promised. I calmly held up my phone. "I'd be careful. Everything's recorded," I said, and two discreet security guards, previously arranged, stepped forward. "They are not on the guest list," I continued. "Please escort them out." And just like that, the room returned to laughter, joy, and celebration. Ethan and Vanessa were removed, faces purple with impotent rage, while my family cheered, clapped, and embraced the moment. I took the microphone, my voice thick with emotion, and explained everything. The demand to exclude my family, the slow realization that the man I loved could not see the value in who I truly was, and why the gala had been necessary. I ended by looking at Dad and Maya. "So," I said, tears threatening, yet a smile spreading across my face. "I canceled the wedding, and instead, I threw a party for the only merger that truly matters, the one I have with all of you." The room erupted in applause, cheers, and laughter. We danced. We celebrated. It wasn't a polished, curated affair. It was real, messy, joyous, and perfect. In the aftermath, the story spread quickly. Ethan and Vanessa's plans unraveled. Without financial leverage, without social credibility, they were left to contend with the consequences of their arrogance. The ring was returned, the apartment abandoned, the illusion shattered. And I sat in my new apartment weeks later, surrounded by boxes and quiet, reflecting on the months of planning, the risks, the secret triumph. I had my family, my integrity, my self-respect, and the knowledge that love, loyalty, and authenticity had won. The project of my life, the one that mattered most, was back on track, and this time the foundation was unshakable.